It's time to get sexy. So watch Secular Sexuality live Thursdays at 7 p.m. Central. Visit tiny.cc/YTSS and call into the show at 512-991-9242 or connect to the show online at tiny.cc/callsex.
Welcome, everybody. We are Talk Heathen, the show where you call in and talk about what you believe and why. We are a product of the atheist community of Austin, a 501c3 organization dedicated to the promotion of positive atheism and the separation of religion and government. Today, I am joined with, for the first time, right, ExXtian Erin. How are you doing?
Hello. Hi. I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on today.
Of course. And actually, before we take calls, I'm kind of curious because you host Truth Wanted. So we have people that obviously know your story there, but there's going to be some new viewers and maybe some audience members that I don't know why you should be checking out all the shows: Truth Wanted, Secular Sexuality, Atheist Experience, Nonprofits, all of them. Maybe we could start out with why that name's prompted, what got you out of Christianity. And then I'm also curious on maybe some other things that we could tie in there as well.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. So my name on here and on all my activism is ExXtian Erin. So obviously I used to be a Christian, and I was a Christian my whole life, born and raised basically in it. I grew up in a Pentecostal denomination, also had a little bit of influence from Baptists and also Presbyterian. So I like to think of myself as like a well-rounded. I was exposed to quite a few different, I guess, theologies. I wouldn't have even called it that back when I was a kid, but
Sure.
I personally spent most of my time in a Pentecostal church, and it was very charismatic. So I grew up with a lot of the services that kind of almost turn into a bit of a stereotype sometimes on different shows. Services where there was a lot of like speaking in tongues and people falling down and people kind of like shaking and these really quite radical experiences and I grew up just thinking that was really normal. So when I would go to a church that didn't have that, I actually thought that they were not the real Christians. Everybody kind of had that opinion of everyone else who wasn't like you. So I grew up as a very charismatic Christian, speaking in tongues and believing in demons and exorcisms and all of that. So I thought that was normal until I got a little bit older and I was exposed to a little bit more of the different types of Christianity. So I eventually kind of moved out of that denomination, ended up in what everybody will call a non-denominational church, which was a little bit calmer, I would say. But I guess it was another 15 years basically after high school. I am married now. I have kids, and a few years ago, I started to, I guess, stop running away from all of my questions and doubts, and actually looking at them. So, for me, it kind of started with looking at the Bible.
Do you remember, like, I know this would be probably difficult, but do you remember like the moment? Was there a moment? What a friend of mine uses a term. Crockpot atheist versus like a microwave atheist, right? You just like pop it in. It's just like something happens, you pop it in, it's ready to come out, right? Whereas like some people, it's more of like this crockpot, this stewing of like actually analyzing your beliefs and then eventually coming to like, wait, how do I know things in the first place? Like, what's my epistemology? What was yours on one of those sides? And then if it was that, do you remember specifically what the catalyst was?
I can kind of identify with both of those kind of descriptions because, like, for me, it felt like there was a moment where I started to like turn the other way and look at my beliefs a lot more like deeply, but I also, when I take a bigger like view of it all, I've been questioning things since I was a kid. But there is a moment that,
so that was like
changed.
kind of already in your nature in a sense.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
I was already, I mean, I was told that I had a bad attitude and that sort of thing, because I had a lot of questions even as a kid. But one of the big moments for me was
good questions equals bad attitude.
Yeah, definitely. Like I was stubborn, and maybe, you know, I was had pride issues or whatever they would say. A couple of years ago, my daughter, who was 7 at the time, actually asked me just a curious kid question. She just said, how does Jesus make people? Is it kind of like magic? And I didn't know what to say. And that was like, I don't know what it was about that moment, but I had no idea what to say to her, because she said the quiet part out loud. Is it like magic? And it wasn't like that second I went and started to look up things, but that was the moment where I was like, I need to have better answers for my kid. And that started kind of a chain reaction. From there, the next big thing was looking at the Bible. And I was a literalist my whole life. So I thought the Bible was literal and inerrant. So discovering that there was even one error in the Bible just shook me up and sent me down that big rabbit hole of really looking at all of it.
Do you recall what one of those things might have been, or one of the things?
Yeah, I do. I remember it was the discovering that there was a different ending of the book of Mark.
I was actually, so I was gonna bring up Mark, 'cause I think it's like Mark 16 about the snakes, right? And so when you brought that up, I was curious kind of your analysis upon that. So yeah, that's interesting. I'll shut up. You go ahead.
And no, specifically because I was raised in the Pentecostal church, some of the major, foundations of like the way our church viewed the world came from those last few passages. So like the greater, these works and these things that you'll be immune to. Like we didn't ever handle snakes, but the idea is there.
Did you drink poisons?
No,
but
the idea.
I see you didn't, because you're here. So I see.
Yeah, I'm glad for that. But the idea was that we could if we wanted to, but we won't, because we're not crazy.
And replicate. That's not something I want anyone to go verify and replicate, obviously. No. But it's interesting that replication in that case, or in any other case, doesn't seem to really be a component that religious people want to hold on to. But that's interesting. So that what I guess the last thing I say before we get to some callers, I'm interested. Did you express that to any of your close family members? And then if so, what was kind of their reaction, or did they just kind of, hand wave it away type of thing?
So like I said, I was always somebody who had like a lot of questions. So I think it wasn't any surprise that I like gave some pushback here and there, but I actually kept it mostly to myself when I actually started to look into these things. My best friend was the only one I really openly talked to about it. And then I got married. I obviously, it was coming out in my conversations with my husband too. And I've said this before too, that like I obviously didn't handle things the way, if I could go back now, I would do it differently, because I just wanted him to. I argued with him a lot. I basically argued with him a lot in the beginning, and then I realized like I need to stop arguing and just kind of like sort out where I'm at, and then just tell him where I'm at. Like, but that was a whole process of kind of deconstructing the ideas of like what you're told in Christianity is how a marriage is supposed to be. You're supposed to kind of fall in line under your husband's guidance. So I was also very like rebellious.
It's like a new shirt. It's actually the same friend that kind of mentioned the microwave atheist thing. It's like you have this shirt, right, that you want to like just kind of show to everybody, right? It's like it's new. Look at me. Look at this. Look at my atheist shirt, right? I've deconstructed this thing. And not realizing that not everybody else really cares about your new shirt that much, because they're kind of invested in their thing, But so I find that interesting, because then eventually, you get less kind of argumentative or combative.
You do,
to maybe street epistemology or whatever type of method you're using to engage with people. Definitely. There's that breaking point I've seen from people I've seen deconvert, where it's like you kind of see this gradients of back to like kind of like all right, I'm kind of settling in with it all.
Definitely. So for me, I didn't want to like actively push people away from me, so that's when I went online. and I've definitely had my moments on Twitter where I was just venting. I was just like, I had no one else to talk to, so I just started venting, and that's where I guess I kind of found some other people who are going through the same thing. So I definitely think I've chilled out since then. Like, I am calmer now. I can have these conversations without like being upset about it. But I think that just comes with time and space from it. But I mean, so I'm out now as an atheist. My whole family knows. And surprisingly, I've had a few people who have also had their own journeys and come, like, I'm not the only one in my family anymore either. So,
oh wow!
But I was the first. So it's been a wild couple of years for me.
That's nice. I mean, I'm sure that's nice to know that you're. And I don't want to take it as a selfish thing. It's like I'm not on this island alone, but that they're actually coming to like a much, from my perspective, a much safer island, an island with a more abundance of food and resources and things that are actually there, and not just like imaginary bananas or something. So yeah, no, that's great. I want to remind everybody that there's many ways to support us. The same support goes towards Truth Wanted, where you can find Erin on Fridays as well. And so one of those things that you can do is you can go look below the video and you can become a member. There's a button that says join. You get some live show perks. Get to have the slow mode go away. You get some badges next to your names, custom emojis and comments, things like that. And then below that as well, we actually have a donation below the live chat. So scroll past the live chat where you see everybody chatting amongst themselves, and you will see a way to donate directly to the ACA. We as hosts, we volunteer our time. It helps for production of the show, helps with anything crew members need. It helps make the show possible. So we really appreciate that, and that avoids any type of fees. It goes directly to the ACA. I also wanted to say real quick that May 13th, we had a show, or Truth Wanted had a show from San Antonio. It was a live show with Secular Student Alliance. I urge everybody to go back because it's there, it's archived. Go back and watch that show. It was a great show. We gave some announcements of it prior, but I want to give another announcement so that people can go back and watch that because it is there. And if you have some free time, you will not regret it. I promise you. With that all said, let's get into our first call. We're going to go with James in Canada. The topic is utility of using philosophy as a proof of God. Can the syllogism be convincing? Hey, James, how are you doing?
Hey.
I'm doing great. How are you guys?
Oh, I'm doing good. I can hear the accent. A fellow Canadian.
the Canadian rise.
I didn't know you're Canadian. Well, that's great. First of all, big fan. Love you guys. So I've been having a few thoughts while watching some of these shows, and I'm trying to understand how people can treat a philosophical argument as proof for something like a God. I'm sorry, I'm getting distracted by the visuals. I'm going to turn off the browser. Okay, so maybe a hypothetical would be the best way to go. Someone presents you with a perfect syllogism that does not require, that does not use any empirically verifiable information.
Mm-hmm.
And the syllogism's conclusion is, therefore, the God of Catholics or Protestants, any God, is true.
Mm-hmm.
What do you do with that? Do you suddenly become a theist?
I typically end up denying.
Or should you become a theist?
Well, so there's actually a lot here. One of those. So what you're saying, you're asking about a syllogism that's going to be devoid of empirical knowledge. And in philosophy, sometimes you'll hear the term a posteriori. It's just kind of a fancy word for empirical, and then that's kind of juxtaposed to something called a priori. And that's going to be something that doesn't really require, empirical experience of the world. And so what you're asking is one of those types of arguments, which is an a priori deductive argument. I don't find them convincing to establish like what we would call ontology in philosophy, or like what something is. It seems pretty skeptical to me. Like if you had some valid argument in terms of its structure is valid, seemingly the content of it is where I'm always going to jump off, because I'm not really certain how, like, let's take the modal ontological argument, right? Or something like that, or some argument that invokes like some term like greatness, right? Or a perfect being or something, or whatever it might be. Well, I have issues with those notions because there's like a semantic battle there, because what someone means by greatness versus what I mean by greatness, or what someone means by perfection versus what I mean by perfection, may just not work. And if one of their arguments is getting to this perfect God, or they have this perfection component in the argument, just as an example, well, I take perfection much differently. My notion of perfection is a being that has no goals, right? All goals have been successfully completed. It doesn't need to take a step to the left, doesn't need to take a step to the right, doesn't need to create, it's not compelled to do anything. If it had at some time interval needed to make a step to the left or create, well, what was it in that time period? It didn't achieve all goals, so thus it wasn't perfect. And so my notion of perfect that I'm going to argue against is that it's just a being that merely does nothing, right? It just merely exists in a perfect state. It would do no action. Otherwise, it would have to be compelled to do that thing. And so my point being on this is that people will use terms in the premises of the argument that we're just going to talk past each other on. And so my biggest issue with any of these a priori arguments is I'm having to like dissect the terms and what they mean. And then in a lot of cases, it's like pointing out something in the world, or it's pointing out some notion that they've just kind of made up. And so I don't really know what the success of the conclusion is going to be if we're just using these kind of notions that can be interpreted in a multitude of ways. I mean, your notion of greatness is what's called normative. It's just some standard that you have, but I could take a different notion. And I don't know how the say the modal ontological or some other argument that invokes some term like that gets off the ground if we don't have a rigorous definition of the terms. So that's one issue I have. Yeah. But probably the least of the issues, but one of the issues I have.
Yeah, that's more or less what I was leaning at, is where my personal feelings were, is that without empirical evidence, I don't see how someone can come up with a, quote, perfect philosophical argument, unquote. Anyway, okay, good. I mean, basically, that's where I was at. I'm trying to wonder, because all of these apologists are just relying on whatever it is that they're talking about. I'm not going to use the words that's coming to my mind.
So
anyway, okay, great. James, thanks. You answered my question. That was perfect.
Well, James, no, there's one other thing about this, and then I want to see if Erin wants to chime in on this before you go. There's a point that someone that I look up to in terms of these types of conversations mentions that I think is a pretty good point, and that's about, it kind of goes tandem with what I'm saying. There's a kind of a shared background. There needs to be a shared background information between the two people that are engaging in an argument. So like if you present an deductive argument that God exists, and I'm presenting some deductive argument that God doesn't exist, I don't find that it's going to be successful in some cases where you just like are just trying to present some argument that assumes things that I already don't accept, like maybe some metaphysics, like say I'm a physicalist and their argument is going to have components of like physicalism not being true. Well, we're already on a non-starter, right? Like I'm on the bus, I pull the cord, I get off the bus stop, right? I just deny the premise. And so in a lot of cases, when you present these arguments, it's going to assume something that the other person just doesn't accept. So what I find to be better for arguments is to actually take like things that the other person believes and derive a contradiction out of it, right? Like a God that is infallible, that can't fail, but also desires a world without evil. And then we go, hey, well, the Christian goes, hey, well, there's evil in the world. Well, we have a failure, right? We have something that didn't want X, but then X actualized, and then, oh, it can't fail, right? That's going to be successful because it's taking things that the other person accepts and showing tension between those things that they accept. Doesn't matter if I die tomorrow or if I never existed. That's a problem they have to wrestle with. So I think arguments in that case are successful, but not from like one where you're assuming something that the other person just denies.
Yeah, I agreed. Yeah. I'm not arguing with you. I agree with you completely. Every time I watch one of these discussions, I'm just seeing that they're talking one person is trying to have a conversation, the other is just making assertions out of the blue. And even if you listen to two different apologists, they're actually differing in some fundamental way. Anyway, that's good, Ed. You cleared that up. I mean, I'm just trying to understand how some people's minds work, and
Sure.
Obviously, I'm not going to figure that out anytime soon.
And James, there's an easier one too. If it's a Christian giving you this like a priori deductive argument, what they're telling you is that this a priori human constructed argument is better than like the salvation of Jesus through the text or through some experience or revelation or through faith, right? They're basically conceding to you that those things are not good to believe in something. And so they're going to have to default to something that they don't realize they're putting Jesus below that argument, right? Because if Jesus really is like truth, then I'm going to come to that. I don't know how a deductive argument is going to be more successful than that revelation.
Yeah, no, I didn't track you there. You might have to elaborate a bit. I didn't catch the contradiction that you're.
No, it's not that it's a contradiction. It's not a contradiction. It's saying that if I talk to like a Christian, and I have a lot of Christian friends, and they present some deductive argument for God, well, one, they're giving me this like vanilla kind of version of God, right? Two, they haven't told me anything about the incarnation. They haven't told me anything about the Trinity, right? So it's not even fair for me to say that this is a reasonable case for an argument when there's all this other stuff on the back end, angels, demons, all this other stuff that's part of their worldview that I've heard nothing about yet, right? So it's going to be one issue there. Two, because those things do exist and there's like Jesus at the back end here, right? Or like the main thing, they're basically putting an argument, a deductive argument. If they're a Christian, they're going to think that that's going to convince me better for some reason than like scripture or like an actual revelation from Jesus. And that to me is like, you're saying philosophy is going to do a better job here than what Jesus actually has to offer. That's what it sounds like to me. It sounds like they're taking stock in some man-made deductive argument over what actually got them to believe that Christ was God or whatever.
That's what I call the Jesus is love argument.
Yeah, that's about my like kind of my perspective on it too, Jmike and James. Like I don't think I ever heard a proper syllogistic argument my whole time as a Christian, to be completely honest. Like that's something that's never talked about on Sunday mornings. It's something that I think most people will discover once they're already kind of like maybe like struggling with holding on to their beliefs, and then they go to look for this evidential proof of God, and it's not there. So I'm not discounting philosophy as a whole practice. Like I think there's definitely there's good use for it because it helps people bounce off their ideas and refine their thoughts on things. But as far as proof for God, it's I just don't see it as something that is used as an evangelistic tool, like in the church, because I don't think it's actually that convincing. And I didn't know much about philosophy when I was a Christian. I've learned more about it since deconverting. I'm still learning about it. And I even in my early days of like looking at debates, I had a hard time understanding a little bit why these things were like not making sense, because everything they're saying kind of does make sense. But then understanding like they are coming from these two completely different like that background knowledge that Mike was talking about. So understanding more about the actual differences, like how they're seeing the things, has made it make a lot more sense to me of why people just can't come to an agreement on things, because they are looking at it from completely different background information. And this whole idea of just like using words completely differently, or having like these completely useless words, I would say sometimes, like these words you wouldn't normally use in everyday language. That's something that's like
the idea that you could sit in a chair and determine like the fundamental nature of reality by pure deduction in your mind seems like you're taking a lot of stock in your own ignorance, and then the type of inferences that you can string together with those types of that type of content. It's really it's strange to me in that sense, because like you'd think Jesus would have just given the deductive argument on the Sermon on the Mount or something, right? Or Muhammad would have just given
If that was convincing, that might be in one of the Gospels.
I love listening to those armchair. I'm sorry, I interrupted you.
No, I was just agreeing with that with Jmike, that if that was the only thing that was needed to convince people of God, then why wasn't it just like in one of the Gospels? Like if that's convincing, kind of thing.
because you always need Tom, or which one's the cat chasing the mouse? Tom, Kit. You always need that
Jerry.
dynamic, right? You always need this element of like, well, then nobody would actually have the choice, right? And so you has to play this chasing game of like, well, yeah, but if it was just obviously true, then like, what would be the fun in that? It's like, okay, yeah, but if it's obviously true, then it shouldn't be able to hide and escape from like actual rigorous investigation, which seemingly it does. But
well, yes, that is exactly that is exactly what I think. Also, I mean, if it's that obvious, it should be incredibly obvious to just anybody, and you don't have to go through these mental gymnastics to try and make a point. Yeah, it's a world that I just simply can't understand. Maybe I'm just too old to understand modern people or these types of people, because they're not actually modern, are they?
Well, so like there's there's utility, right, and obviously in propositional logic and stuff, but what's not usually being done in those applications is like deducting supernatural beings for which we have no implicit data for, right? So I think I wouldn't make this as hard, like, or if this is a struggle or something that bothers you. I mean, you can just hold the view that, hey, so I think Sean Carroll is somebody that also holds the view, like, I don't think that a priori arguments for God could ever be successful, right? It's not any theist or Christian that's gonna like scoff at that. I'm just like, okay, well, I still don't see that you've demonstrated your case, so I don't know what you're laughing about, but yeah.
Yeah. No,
well, we're gonna
want to give
sorry,
the
James,
impression that this is caused. Sorry, I interrupted you.
No, I interrupted you. Go ahead,
It's
James.
It's the leg between Canada, and, like, wherever you're calling from, Canada to Austin. There's just like there's a leg.
Yeah,
I know
and there may be an extra lag because I decided to use Skype for some silly reason, and that may be adding to the problem. Yeah, I'm calling from Ottawa, actually, the great capital. Okay, man, I really appreciate your time. And thank you for clarifying this point for me. I really appreciate it.
Sure. Yeah. Thank you, James.
All right. Have a nice one.
You too.
Bye.
All right. Reminder for everybody that you can also support us on Patreon. You can go to tiny.cc/PatreonTH and become a patron. We'll shout you out every live show. We'll shout out the top 5 as well as an honorable mention, which we will do later in the show as well. You can also support and watch us, or not watch actually, but listen to us rather, at tiny.cc/AEN podcasts. Again, we have 2 full sets of hair and a beard, and that might be too much for some people. May have some phobias there. So you can go and listen to AEN podcasts, tiny.cc/AEN podcasts. You can also go to a fan-run Facebook group at tiny.cc/FBTHG and continue the conversation there with other people. Start your own conversations, formulate a group, a YouTube channel, stuff like that. Help get people who are either sitting on the fence or potentially get to the fence, really actually break down what it is they believe and see if they have good reason for it. You can also continue the conversation on Discord with us. We will both be on the after show at tiny.cc/ACD Discord. And that is also a fan-run Discord group where you can set up the same types of things in the Facebook group. That one's, in my opinion, is a little bit more access in terms of if you want the conversation, like go directly into conversations, then there you go. Like you can get into a group, have a voice chat with other members. There's theists that go in there. And if you're more into the text, you kind of want to stay behind the scenes at first, put your toe in the water. Facebook group is a great way to start before maybe venturing into the Discord. You can also check out Nonprofits, which airs at 3 p.m. Central after this show at tiny.cc/YTAP, or I'm sorry, YTNP. I don't know. I'll learn what an A and an N is eventually. Or you could just, type in on your YouTube, the Nonprofits. It's the flagship show of the Atheist Experience Network. So don't forget that. All right, so let's move on to another call. We are going to go with, let's go with Amanda in Texas. Forgiveness. Wants to talk about forgiveness. Christians preach about forgiveness no matter what. I don't think we should forgive abusers. Pronouns are she, her. How you doing, Amanda?
Hey, how are y'all?
Doing good.
Hi.
So specifically, what did you want to call in about?
Well, I don't mean to plug anything right here, but I just wanted to give some context. There's a bill being pushed called the Stop Institutionalized Child Abuse Act about the troubled teen industry. And I was actually at a Christian it was really a reform school. And I was Christian for a long time until during the pandemic when I became an apostate. And the main thing I remember about Christianity is they were talking about, you have to forgive people, or else you're going to feel guilty. And there was even kind of like a group therapy session back at that school where the pastor got up there and he had this like big heavy chair and he was like, you need to forgive people or else you're going to be carrying this chair around. And he threw the chair across the room and was like, that's what it feels like to forgive people. So there's a lot of abuse that goes on at those homes. And I really haven't forgiven the abusers there. And I don't really feel like it's eating me alive or that I'm like carrying a chair on the back of my shoulder. But everyone's like, everybody in the Christian society, and even my mother, who's not even really a Christian anymore, they keep saying, forgive them. It's going to eat you alive. But I really don't think it is.
I just think this is a really good example of how religious people totally just don't understand the human psyche and like how things work, right? Like I personally think that idea of like being forced to forgive everyone who's ever harmed you in any way is just one of the other ways that they can push kind of the escaping accountability for people who are actually like abusers. I personally don't think that, like, I agree with you that like there's no need to forgive everybody. You don't have to do anything. If that becomes part of your process of kind of moving on, then that's great. You can forgive somebody without ever talking to them. There's a lot of these false ideas I think that are out there that you need to forgive or it's going to do something harmful to you. That's another way that is right. That's further victim blaming. The idea that you have to have some sort of closure, you have to let the person know that you forgive them. That's not like, there's nothing in like, I think psychology that shows that that's a necessary part of moving forward after being traumatized or going through something. I think that one of the other kind of like harmful things it does, that message, is it can cause you as somebody who has had something done to you to bypass whatever level of kind of grieving or processing that you need to do when you're pushed to forgive somebody or to get past something before you're ready. I think that that's one of the harms in that idea. And then the other thing I thought about with that is it's one of those ideas that it's not even just like a Christian or a religious idea. It's kind of leaked into like larger culture too. This idea that like you have to forgive, right, and love covers a multitude of sins. You'll hear that kind of stuff from even non-religious people. So I think it's just one of those areas that we need to kind of combat. That's maybe not the healthiest psychological approach for everybody, and we need to stop pushing that on victims.
Right. And the reason I thought it was more of a Christian thing is because I'm a teacher, so I show videos all the time. And we were looking at the Holocaust, and there was this one, I can't remember her name. She was a victim of the twin experiments there. Yeah. And she had, quote, forgiven all of them and was trying to move on. But then there was a section of another Jewish person who was like, how could she do that? How could she forgive them? And I thought about it, and I was like, well, maybe this is coming from more of a Christian context, because they teach you that Christ suffered so much for your sins, and he forgave everybody, and that's why you need to do it. You need to be like Christ.
Yeah. So, what was that first thing you said about you have to... Sorry, I just blanked on something there, but just being forced to move forward with something before you're ready. I don't agree with that at all. And I think that people will take whatever they need from the situations. For some people, I will help them. It will help them to move forward if they choose to like look at the person that harmed them with some sort of compassion. I know that like that is a part of it for some people, but it's definitely not the way that you can actually like process trauma and move forward.
Yeah, it seems odd to be forced.
Yeah,
it seems like a weird notion. It's like it's kind of like what's expected of you in that sense. That I don't know how genuine that someone could feel even having all that forgiveness when it's like predicated on something external.
Yeah.
And the idea that you can't move forward unless you forgive somebody. I've definitely moved forward in my life, like, and people are still like, well, why haven't you forgiven them? Why haven't you? I was like, and I'm always just like, because they abused me and countless other teenagers. And they say, well, you need to move past that. And I'm like, I have. I'm a functioning adult now with a job and students who I want to protect, you know?
Do you think too that kind of speaks to this inability of like our Western culture to just acknowledge that anger is a valid emotion, and that we're like that is there's nothing wrong with being angry about something, that there's a purpose to that. Our anger tells us something. It helps us to stay safe sometimes by continuing to like have maybe some anger about something. That might be a way that you're protecting yourself from future harm in that area. So I'm just reminded of that idea that there's a whole host of emotions that we're not really supposed to feel. They kind of get demonized in a lot of ways, especially for women, you know, like these ideas of being angry or resentful or catty or whatever, these other things, which are real emotions that you shouldn't have to deny you're experiencing. Right. So it's just this, it seems like it's all on this fundamental misunderstanding of what harm does to somebody and what it does to them in the body level, physical level, and on their emotional level, and what good processing looks like. And it's not the same for everybody.
Right. Yeah. And I don't understand this idea of like, just because you haven't forgiven somebody doesn't mean you haven't moved on or, quote, let it go. I hear that all the time because I started being an activist for this, get the government to crack down on the troubled teen industry. And people are like, Amanda, just let it go. Just let it go. It was a long time ago. And it doesn't click in my head.
Well, and see, there's a good example of where
would say that.
There's a good example of an emotion like anger being beneficial because it's causing you to pursue this thing that you see has a greater good to it. And that's, I'm sure that in somewhere in there, that was fueled at some point, or maybe continues to be fueled by a level of anger. And so why is it so important that you aren't allowed to hold on to that? Like, it's an important emotion.
Right.
Yeah. Especially if it serves as like a pretty stark reminder, right? In some cases, like, I don't know why you would abandon that.
There's some things we should stay angry about.
Yeah. I absolutely agree.
Yeah.
I agree. I definitely agree.
Yeah, because that kind of notion is like, it's like saying that I should forgive, all the. It's like in that case, I can't forgive. It's like I have to forgive this whole entire structure where religion has leaked in so heavily into legislation or how I live my life or what I can even say about me being an atheist without other people looking at me strange, right? Where it's like.
Right.
This notion where if I'm supposed to forgive, like, because then I'm expected, like, by that token to forgive what's instilled that in the first place. And fuck no, I'm not going to, would never do it. I want it I want it gone. I want people to come to this conclusion, not forcefully, but I want them to come to the conclusion rationally, right? And if I have to just forgive it, then there's no process, right? So that forgiving all, members in the set type of thing just seems like, it's like the con man type of grabbing somebody in. It just sounds attractive, right? It just sounds like, wow, how selfless. I want to be a part of that. It's greater than myself because I get angry and I don't forgive somebody for, stealing my sandwich at lunch or whatever. I mean, but sorry.
And it's really hard for me to explain to these, to the people that tend to combat me when I say, I'm not going to forgive them. I don't want to. It's hard for me to get it to click with them that it's I really don't feel like it's hurting me to hold on to this, I guess, grudge, you could call it, or this anger or this hurt for what happened to me. It doesn't hurt me to hold on to it. And I feel like they just like don't believe me or maybe it's the whole like, well, you hurt, you just don't realize it. But no, I'm not. I think okay.
I think there's a greater need to have conversations about how we have like healthy interactions and why it's okay to like stay angry about something, why it's okay to have your boundaries, why it's okay to, create distance between yourself and situations or people or institutions. And I think that whole area needs to be explored more, and more acceptance about how different people deal with things differently. And just because somebody still seems angry about something doesn't mean that they're like in this unhealthy place or that they are being affected in a negative way. I do think it's just a way to kind of, push the whole thing away. Like, no, we don't want to deal with this. It makes us uncomfortable that you're still upset about it. I would just prefer it if you just forgave everybody and we went back to this thing where everybody kind of gets over things quickly because it's much easier for everyone else. I think that's something we need to work on as a society.
I definitely agree with you on that. And a lot of people have said, oh, you're being immature while holding on to it. I just think to myself, well, no, I'm not. I'm not turning my back on it and, quote, forgiving. I'm facing it straight on. Doesn't that take more maturity than to just ignore it? And they just don't believe me.
Yeah. Well, just keep doing what you're doing. I mean, how you feel about it. And so people can keep saying that to you, and people can see it however they want to see it. And that's not really like, we're not going to change anything overnight over how we're allowed to act over things.
Yeah. Don't let people have that type of power over you in that sense. That's one of the, I don't think I've applied it perfectly, but it's one of the better things that I've applied more recently, is not letting especially when it's something like that's not going to change, right? Your disapproval is not going to change that fact, right? So, I'm not going to let you have that power over me. It's just, no, I'm not going to do it. And better yet, I know I'm right because it's serving as a reminder for me in the future for potentially people like yourself, right? To avoid that. And so, Amanda, I wanted to say as well, because I think I heard you say you're a teacher. I wanted to say thank you for being an educator. We really appreciate that.
Oh, thank you for saying that. Definitely.
Of course. I immense respect for anybody that is combating what we get just a glimpse of when we have conversations about creationism or whatever it might be, and these these debate circles that it's good to see someone on the front lines trying to correct that from the start. So
yeah, definitely. I'm more in the book banning side of it. I'm an English teacher, so. Yeah,
sure.
Sometimes, but
still part of it. Still part of the process.
It matters. It really matters. So thank you so much, Amanda. All right. I want to remind everybody, just like with the May 13th event that Truth Wanted had, you can go back and look. If you missed this last week, why don't you take a look at this clip, and it'll inspire you to go back.
Recognize aspects that you might otherwise be completely unfamiliar with. Like, how many people in the last 20 minutes learned the word Fudenaria and suddenly discovered that, oh goodness, maybe I need to open up another tab.
Because we grew up in evangelicalism, we want to just tell everyone now, like, I'm an atheist, because we were used to having beliefs where all we did was proclaim our beliefs and we were supposed to preach and proselytize. And so it's hard to deconstruct and lose that mentality of having to share.
I don't know how common sharing bodily fluids was in any of those types of rituals. There was some strange stuff, but nowadays this type of stuff is generally confined to the realm of some extreme sexual fetishes.
Or Sunday Mass.
It's like saying the King of the United States has a beard. Well, until you show me that there's a King of the United States, the proposition's false. But you go, oh, the King of the United States doesn't have a beard. Well, that proposition's also false. Wait a second. He either has a beard or he doesn't have a beard. How can they both be false? Well, they're both false because there's no King of the United States.
How old do you think our solar system is? Not more than tens of thousands of years. I mean,
oh my!
They have an exact date.
Okay, well, you're wrong about that then. So.
All right, let's go on to B in Virginia. Pronouns are he, him. Wants to discuss that they're interacting with a theist who doesn't want to discuss religion, but it always ends up becoming religious anyways. B, how are you doing?
I'm okay. Yeah, you basically summed it up. Have either one of you played a video game called Final Fantasy VII?
Of course.
No, I'm sorry.
Do you remember the, I'm going to call it optional mission where you go into space and recover a giant materia?
Yeah.
Okay. And you need to get a code from a character named Sid, and you take a chance, and then Sid basically, well, I know this is not a nice term. He spazzes out and like, I can't figure it out. That's basically I mean, I don't mean to be mean, but that's kind of the impression I get. It's like he'll make an insistence like, for example, sex and gender are the same thing. And I'll go, well, even on an etymological level, they aren't. The definition of those two words are two different things. And he'll go,
did you? Oh, sorry. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I'll go, no, they aren't. And I go, okay, what's your proof? And it ultimately boils down to the Bible. God created man and woman, yada, yada, yada. And I go, okay, you realize we're about to discuss religion. You say you don't want to discuss religion, then stop bringing up religion. And it's just very frustrating.
Has this friend of yours told you why they don't want to talk about religion with you? Like, what's their reasoning?
I wonder if B puts on the gloves and knocks every point.
That's
down.
what I'm thinking. Yeah, I'm thinking that he's a hard one to maybe convince.
That's it, because you see, there's a key difference. I've actually read the Bible and he hasn't.
Yeah.
Okay, well that's
kind of
so,
why I can. I will beat him with his own Bible. Yes.
Yeah. So whenever you get in that conversation where it's like it does get into you are traversing this conversation and you're at that topic. Let's say it's the Bible more right now. The talking point prior was not accepting a distinction, right? It's a very specific sex and gender distinction, and that's based upon like the most important text of all time that the person hasn't read. Have you brought that up to them that, hey, I have read that, you haven't? How do you even have a ground to stand on to say that's the case?
Well, that's where it gets, at least to me, rather amusing, because they will insist, oh, yes, I know exactly what's in the Bible. I haven't read it, but I've been told what's in it, and therefore I know. And also, as a child, I read a children's book of Bible stories, and so I will inform him. I will call him Clyde because someone else named him Clyde. I'll mention something from the Bible, and he'll go, no, that's not in the Bible. That's definitely not in the Bible. I go, okay, here you are, chapter and verse. Like, well, that part of the Bible isn't to be taken seriously or whatever. And it's, at the end of the day, I almost feel bad. But it's like, hey, I'm going to win this argument because I actually know what I'm talking about. You need to stop making these claims until you can back them up. And then he questions what a claim is or is not. And it just gets rather silly. And I don't know how to
Well,
At the
so
end of the day, I recognize it's not my job to sort him out, but eventually I'm afraid he's going to find someone who's not going to respond to his bad arguments with words. They're just going to beat him. They're going to use violence upon him. And I don't support that idea, but he just refuses to listen to reason.
So every person, I think that, I don't know for sure, but at some point when you're a believer, it would be true to be said that this person at that moment of time is unwilling to listen to reason by some atheist. But at the same time, that person ends up sitting to my left, right? Like someone like Erin, right? Or someone like Dan, or someone like Kenneth, right? And so we do end up getting this position where there is kind of the light at the end of the tunnel. It's not like, yes, you're right. It's not your job to if somebody doesn't want to go through the motions of the conversation, like that they have that right. But what I have an issue with, I guess, and what sounds like you're frustrated with, is that you've drawn this line in the sand. You've said, look, if we cross this line, we can have this conversation. We're both willing participants of the conversation, and hopefully we don't deliberately try to offend that person, but more so talk about the beliefs. Now, it sounds like you're on that side. You want to have that conversation. It sounds like what they're doing is sticking, like they're on the other side. Like, I don't want to engage, but they stick one foot over, right? And they're like kind of wanting to play both sides. They want to have the conversation, but then they want to, the second you call them out, they want to stick their foot back over on the other side where, hey, don't challenge me on my beliefs. But I'm wondering if it's the approach that you're actually going about it. I don't know your conversations, but I'm wondering, I've found some real good success just asking someone like, hey, what you believe is true. I don't accept it. In fact, I think it's false, but let's go through like your reasonings. Like let's have this won't be a one conversation thing. We'll go through this. We'll try not to be as heated as we can, but let's do this through a series of weeks or conversations. And if you go through just discussing the ideas, like, this is my view, that's your view, and the person if you try to be as nice as you can about it and go through that process and they're still just hesitant, then clearly they're going to have to come through that on their own term. But I'm hesitant to think that a change in an approach, if it's important to you, in terms of like, hey, you know what, I'm just curious what you believe. Maybe you're not, don't be dishonest, but say like, I like these conversations, and if what you believe is true, it should have nothing to fear from investigation. Do you agree? And if they're like, yeah, well then I don't think we'd be doing Jesus or anybody any disservice by actually investigating these claims. You said that they don't understand claims and you have to go through that. You might have to break this down very, very granular, right? You might have to get on a very like granular level. But let me just ask you, is it more important for this person to go on making that mistake, or if they're willing to have the conversation, is it more important for you to try your best to at least just give them the opposition? Like, would you prefer?
I'm honestly not sure I'm not sure how to answer that question.
Yeah.
Well, so would you? Okay, so would you? Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Okay, so
I've got a few.
What?
I was just going to say, I've got a few questions that maybe we could take it back even one step further backwards here. And like, what do you want out of this friendship? What are you hoping for in this interaction? Are you wanting your friend to like reevaluate their beliefs? Are you wanting to just have a friend that you can hang out with and play video games with and just like not get into these conversations with? Are you worried about this person's safety if you were to act this way with somebody else who isn't maybe as easygoing or patient as you? I think maybe taking a step back and looking at your friendship in the first place and realizing what do you want out of this friendship, and taking whatever approach kind of gets you to that. So if this is a friend that you just really like hanging out with, maybe let's like think about what kind of approach you're taking with this person. If this is somebody that you're seriously concerned about how they're interacting with other people, maybe go to them and tell them that what your concerns are, and just and in a very non-threatening way. And I it kind of sounds like whatever approach you're taking right now is causing them to become defensive. And I think like we would probably all agree that there's probably something going on that he, I'm not sure if you said it was a he or not, but yeah, like I'm sure they do have things that they wish they could defend better about their beliefs. So maybe that's why it keeps coming up over and over again. But I would say just take a step back and think about this friendship and what you want out of it, and then take the necessary approach. I think that Jmike had some good points that maybe if one of your goals here is that you would like this person to reevaluate their beliefs, there's different ways that you can have those conversations. And one of the worst ways is to just get your friend to get on the defensive. So trying to avoid that would probably get you off this kind of roller coaster of doing the same thing over and over again, talking about religion, but not talking about religion.
Yeah.
How does that sound?
Well, if your question is ultimately what would I like to get out of this, it can basically be summed up as I'd like them to stop accusing all the entire.
Sorry, I couldn't hear you. Cut out.
Yeah, I cut out. I know this is not the best wording, but just man up to a certain point. I mean, he has strong opinions on the LGBT community, but yet he refuses to even use those words. He has thoughts on the concept of sex and gender being the same thing, but yet he can't bring himself to use the word sex. And it becomes very difficult to have a conversation with someone when they can't even bring themselves to use proper vernacular. And I just, if he's uncomfortable saying the word sex for whatever reason, I personally am of the opinion that that's silly, given that he's very much an adult. But that's fine. I would just like him to stop sharing his views on things he can't actually talk about, for lack of a better term. I don't know how to say it.
Yeah, no. So it sounds like B, you're saying he expresses views. Those views funnel down to his religious beliefs, right? And he expresses these, which have real harm, which impact real victims, which impact real people, right? And that's funneled to this idea of what he believes in. Yet he has not only does he not have any justification for it, he doesn't even looked into it properly to know what the type of justification he would need in order to use it. And so it sounds like you just want to check him at the door. Like, hey, I don't want you can't go on spewing this bigotry that stemmed from something when you can't even like defend the foundation of it. And you don't even know what's going on in the book at which you espouse it from. I think that's perfectly fine if you're wanting to check this person. If it's making them like actually just disrespect what somebody would be, what somebody's pronouns are, for example, and he just wants to deliberately do that, then it's what I said earlier is going to be hard to do. It's going to be really hard to be as nice as you can about it, because in a lot of cases, it's like the last call with the one call with with the deductive arguments. There's a psychological component that's at play here that it's not just going to be as simple as I schooled you in this conversation 20 times and now you just admit defeat, right? They have to analyze it themselves, but it will help. It will help to just constantly just show them up every time, right? Whether I think it's sometimes best to be as nice as you can. I don't succeed in that, but I do see people in other conversations go a little further or make more progress. And ultimately, if you want to change, I would just evaluate if they're going to be susceptible to those other types of ways of talking about it. And then two, if this friendship's even really worth carrying, because at some point it's just got to give. And if somebody's just deliberately wanting to create victims themselves based on their own ignorance, I don't really see much value in the friendship, but I do see value in trying to change that person so that they don't keep impacting more people and creating more victims.
And one way that you could go about that is just trying to figure out some good boundaries with that too. Like if he's not going to even take the effort into learning how to justify his positions, you can take that step of making a boundary. Like dude, if you're not going to look at how this actually works, I'm not going to talk to you about this. Like you could be the one who says like, I'm not talking to you about this unless you do some research, like go figure out what you're actually talking about, because I'm not having this conversation with you again until you do XYZ. Yeah. Kind of sounds like there's some boundaries needed.
I don't think that approach would exactly be the best one, because I'm not going to have the conversation about how sex and gender are two different things with you. His response would likely be okay, and then he's going to continue going on insisting that, well, trans people are mentally ill, blah, blah, blah. It's just all this.
Call him out for
he'd
that.
actually enjoy me stopping challenging him on things. And
kind of sounds like he likes to get a rise out of you.
Yeah, I would.
Well, okay, you keep calling him my friend. Well, I care about him, but he clearly wants nothing to do with me. And while I'm more than open to having a conversation with him, let's just say there are factors involved that he cares about, but I don't consider to be relevant factors that keep that from happening. Okay. But we do have friends in common, and he just will not stop to them. So I would just like him to stop. And I don't know. I don't know.
Well, try one thing. Try another approach. See if that works. Maybe send. There's a lot of these types of debates online. Have him in his own, in his own room or where he's alone. Send him these debates. Say, watch these. You're on one side, I'm on the other. I don't know how anybody could watch the talking points from the side that he accepts and maintain that position, right? And that might be one way. Maybe it's not the interaction is something that's going to turn him off immediately, and it needs to be something where he kind of stews in his own mind. There's a lot of ways to do it, but yeah, those are the only ones I can offer, and maybe call back and see if there's any progress, and we can kind of go through it, or have him call the show, right? I'll talk to him. See if
I was also.
He would never call, and in fact, when he found out, because this is not the first time I've called in about him, he threatened legal action, accusing me of committing some crime, calling in and doxing him or something else. I don't know what exactly crime he thought I was breaking.
Well, let's we'll put that to the. Don't worry about any of that, because that's just all that's expressing is that this is somebody that doesn't sound like it's going to be worth your time. The only thing that's worth the time salvaging in this case is for the protection of other people that have to come across this person. And so, yes, keep trying, right? But as far as that, there's a lot of components that another human necessarily can't break down on their own. It's going to have to be a process that they have within them. But thank you, B, for the call. We're gonna move on. We got a bunch of callers in the queue, but thank you again for. No, you're fine. You're fine. I just want to make sure we're getting as many callers as we can. So, but we do appreciate the call. Thanks, B. Let's shout out our top 5 Patreon. Like, I hate when people say Patreons, and I just almost did it. So
I do it too.
Yeah. So, but you can go to Patreon, tiny.cc/. Patreon TH or patreon.com talk heathen to me, and you can become a top 5 patron, potentially shout it out on the show. And for our week's top 5 this week is going to be Eric Tweet, Dingleberry Jackson, Balaam's Donkey. I'm sorry, I would give that more of a shout. I have a little raspy voice today, if you can't tell with my my squeaking. It sounds like I'm still going through development, but yeah, I've had a bad throat today. But Ayame, Dan Conger, an honorable mention, username. So thank you for your support. We appreciate that. And anybody in the future that wants to help support, we greatly appreciate that. We have a theist caller on the line, so let's go to Patrick in Florida. Why does nobody question atheism like they do theism? What's going on, Patrick? Pronouns are he, him.
Hi, yes. I was just curious because I think even with theists don't question atheists, but atheists question theists more. Perhaps I'm wrong on that, but it just seems to be the case. I've been in a lot of debate groups online, through Facebook, through the years since about 2014. And I do assert that atheism is a leap of faith exactly the same as theism.
Okay, so let me ask you, Patrick.
What justify that leap of faith?
Okay.
Over
all right.
theism.
Sure. So there's a couple things I really already don't like about this. One, it sounds like you're trying to pull the atheist down to you. Like, I have to use this thing that's not really good at determining beliefs. So let me pull you down with me, right? Let's be part of the club. That's not the case. Two, let me just ask you, what do you take atheism to be? How do you define
atheism is, to me, a rejection of any possibility of God. It's the lack of evidence, right? You say there's no evidence, but what would be evidence of God? It's subjective at best, evidence of God.
Patrick, let me, since we're striking out already. So the first, let me just give you what we mean, right? By the term, there's a proposition. By proposition, this is a statement. It's either true or false. God exists, right? We're not convinced that the proposition is true.
So you think you have the null hypothesis in that God is the hypothesis. Let me just make sure I'm correct on this. Do you feel like you have a null hypothesis in that there's been no legitimate evidence of God presented, so therefore you reject the claim?
Yeah, so it's a good question to ask the distinction between no evidence. So no, my distinction is that there's not sufficient evidence because I could come up to it like some snow tracks or something like that, and you could say it's a unicorn and I can say it's a deer. And technically, yeah, I mean, if given our notion of what we mean by a unicorn, that could potentially be some evidence towards a unicorn, right? But we don't actually have the data for the unicorn. We have the data for the horse. So I'm going to say it's the horse because we're reasonably justified. But I'm not saying that there's what I'm saying is that there's not sufficient evidence to warrant the belief that God exists. I'm not saying that you couldn't posit some evidence.
And I don't think you're saying that we did not. That we were.
Do you think?
Hold on, Patrick, hold on, Patrick. I don't want to mute you. Erin was speaking.
That's okay.
Sorry.
I was just gonna add to that like I don't think that you're also meaning that we reject the idea that there will ever possibly be evidence, right? Like, just it hasn't been nothing that's been presented to us so far has been convincing.
What I've gathered from any and every atheist is that they don't think there is evidence or ever will be,
or could be any possibility of future evidence. I don't think that any of us claim to be like all-knowing. So.
Well, you're talking to us, so don't worry about the other atheists. You're talking to us, so let's engage with us because it's just weird to talk about people that aren't here, right?
Well, I am an atheist from several standpoints, so I mean, I am with you on like Christianity.
Wait, hold on. Hold the fuck on. What do you mean when you say you're an atheist? So
sometimes
you don't accept so do you think the proposition God exists?
I'm a theist, but from a Christian standpoint, I'd be an atheist, right? Because I don't believe that.
No, we're saying God. We're not saying Yahweh. We're not saying Allah. We're saying God. Right?
There's many different gods to be an atheist.
Which one do you believe?
Yeah, which one do you believe?
Which one do you believe in?
I believe in the God of Einstein and Spinoza.
Okay.
Balling ass geniuses.
Okay, so is this a thing that you believe in?
You two, I'm sure, are smarter.
It's not about intelligence or smart. I just want to know, right? You have a claim. Go. What is the thing that you believe in? Because I didn't catch what you said. I just heard something about Einstein and
What I'm
Spinoza's God.
saying is, why is it okay for you to ask me that, but not to ask me why do you disbelieve?
Okay, I'll give you. Okay,
Disbelieve through lack of evidence.
putting you on mute. It's really easy, right? Right now, there are an even number atoms in the universe, right? That's what you're saying. That's what you're telling me, right? This is an analogy. You're telling me there's an even number of atoms in the universe, right? It's either even or odd, right? Either God exists or God doesn't exist, right? I'm saying I don't believe you when you say that you have evidence that it's even, right? Does that mean that I think there's an odd number of atoms in the universe?
It seems like that's what you believe, Frank, or
No.
whoever your name is.
My name is not Frank. We'll call me. I'll be Frank. Let me be Frank. Okay, I'll be Frank. Let me be frank with you. Okay, Patrick.
Be frank with me. Well,
Yeah,
frankly, I'm just okay. I'm sorry.
That was the joke.
Well, I guess for answering from these two atheists, that's not where we're coming from. So
yeah. So what I'm saying,
Can I ask y'all a simple question? Can I ask a simple question and get a simple answer?
You can, but can you actually answer like? Can we go through the dialectic that I was going through real quick? Because you're just kind of you're gish galloping from one thing to the next.
I'm just saying, you always want to ask.
Okay, I go back and watch a lot of shows. I don't have to put a lot of people on mute. I really don't. I try not to. I gave you a scenario, right, where you claim that there's an even number of atoms in the universe, and I don't think that you have sufficient evidence to warrant that claim. And then you said, I think it does sound like you're saying that it's odd. Okay. Why are you deliberately straw manning the view if I'm telling you that I know it either has to be even or odd, but I'm not convinced we have sufficient evidence to determine, right? Why are you just ignoring what I'm saying? Because what conversation happens between two people and you listen to what they say and you respond, but it just sounds like you're like, no, I don't believe you.
Well, do you think you speak for all atheists?
No, there's one proposition on the table.
Okay, so you speak for yourself, right? You speak for yourself as an atheist, not all atheists worldwide, right?
Yeah, because my neighbor, 2 houses down, my neighbor,
you don't
Patrick,
you don't know.
Patrick.
I
have an atheist
I don't think
neighbor.
We're back and forth here.
This is not. We'll move on to someone else. If I'll give one more chance, Erin, let's have you try. Maybe it's me. I have a neighbor down the street from me. He's a flat earther. Not only does he not believe in God, he thinks God doesn't exist. Okay, you don't find many of that because usually it's like biblically related, but
yeah,
that exists. Yeah. I know them. Maybe they're pulling my leg, but that's their claim. Okay, so yes, I don't speak for all atheists because some atheists can present arguments, like deductive arguments on why all gods don't exist, right? I don't think those are successful. I think there are ones that show classical theism to be false, but we're talking about God, like just God, right? Whatever someone attaches that meaning to. And I'm saying we don't accept the proposition to be true. And your whole thing is, why does nobody question atheism like they do theism? Well, they can question. What's the question? Oh, why don't you accept my thing? Because you haven't presented the evidence. Now fucking present it, right? There's the conversation, right? That's what's going to turn into. So instead of doing that dance, Patrick, what's the evidence for the God you believe in?
Well, I would have to ask you what would be evidence to you.
Yeah, something.
What would you consider evidence?
Sure, yeah, give me something in the world. Inductive evidence.
Okay.
Right?
Many scientists,
make a prediction. I don't know.
Scientists and philosophers estimate that the universe itself may well be conscious. That would be evidence.
Okay,
That's
so you
one
think
thing. I can speak of a lot of others.
All right, so let's tack point one. Point one is you're just saying people believe this thing. Scientists believe this thing. When no, they don't. Right? There might be some, but that's not the consensus. Two, right? Even if someone believed that to be true, we would ask, well, what's the independent evidence that they're looking at that has them believing that that's true, right? You're just avoiding actually giving the independent evidence and focusing on like other people think this is true. Okay, well, if other people think it's true, then that funnels down to the independent evidence that you could provide. But sorry, Erin,
what you would have
maybe you should go.
I believe that what I'm saying is wrong is that the universe is finite, not conscious, and not the origin of all other things in existence, which it is. So claim that the universe is finite, not conscious, and not the origin of everything else in existence, and let me hear you lie.
You want wait?
I'm not gonna lie. I'm a little lost. I don't know where to take this conversation.
I don't think Patrick knows.
Now.
I don't think Patrick knows what he's saying.
No, I think that there's a heavy appeal to like authority or consensus here, like that, like, you know, not even that, like consensus, because obviously like not all the scientists would believe that. That is, I would say, kind of a fringe belief, I think, among scientists. So I don't know where you want to go from here, Patrick. I think we're happy to nail, if we can nail one thing down, we'd be happy to talk about it. But I don't really think we have one particular thing we could talk about.
No, I don't know. I don't know how serious Patrick was, but look, if I think I understood the last point, which I don't think Patrick even did, but if you were just saying that you need this thing in order to like ground things right for intelligibility or something, well, you're just giving an if and only if statement, which requires an argument or evidence for. So if you're saying like the thing you believe in can only instantiate like us being able to communicate or have intelligibility of the world, or that's required for that thing, that's an if and only if statement. Okay, so now demonstrate that that's required, right? It's not, that's your claim. It's not, this doesn't just like get past, we have a rigorous standard to assess claims, and then you just want to like, just go around this thing, right? The claim works on its own, just on face value. All right, let's try, if we have enough time, awesome. Let's try to get Michael in Arizona. Imagine we could contact sorry, Michael, I hit the button prematurely there. Pronouns are he, him. Why don't you tell us why you're calling today?
Yeah, I wanted to ask you all a question. I'm to the atheist.
So I'm gonna put you off on mute, but it's like you're going through a wind tunnel right now, man. Like screen callers, tell everybody, don't put it on speaker. Make sure there's no noise there. I'm gonna let you back on, but if there's a bunch of noise, I'm just gonna drop a call.
Speaker.
Yeah, take it off. Yeah, there we go. That's better.
Hello?
Yeah. Sorry, it was really loud.
That's much better.
Yes, I'm sorry. I want to ask a question. I've never heard anybody ask this question before, and I know it's probably the dumbest question anybody's ever asked y'all. I've listened to the Atheist Experience, and I've learned so much from Mr. Delahunty and most of the people out there. And I wanted to ask and I know this is kind of stupid, and I know it's. I like to set it up as if. Everything is basically the way it is now, and say the president or special news report came on the television and they said special report, and the president comes on and he says that we are in touch with an extraterrestrial civilization that is like 1 million years more advanced than we are, that is 40 light years away in our own like galaxy. I mean, what would a prosperity minister say? Would they have any? I mean, would it be the end of the religion, the atheist experience? Would any of that? I mean, I don't really understand, but I would like to know what y'all your opinion would be. I would like to know. Thank you.
Well, I have a former alien next to me.
Yeah, so. Michael, I've asked this question and I have some answers for you. First of all, I that's a whole other story, Jmike, about how I used to believe I was an alien. Maybe we can get into that. But I have asked this question and I've heard the responses from a few different Christians from different denominations. So my first answer would be no, it wouldn't end. it wouldn't end their belief, not initially anyway. And I say that because I do understand this idea of like this cognitive dissonance and this ability to kind of recreate and go back and kind of reinterpret your own text. I think that that's always a possibility, and that's why we continually see this kind of revamping of the theology to make it fit with what we understand about the world now. They continuously do that with a lot of different things. And then the other thing that I have actually heard said is that they already have a basis. There are many people who are Christian, and I think in Islam as well, there are already texts that are being pulled right now that are already preemptively working the idea of aliens into the theology. So I've heard verses like that Jesus is the redeemer of the cosmos. I mean, in the Greek, it says like cosmos or something. And that's already like, there it is. See, it doesn't matter if it's an alien from outside of our Earth, that it's not about just the redemption of humans. It's about the redemption of the cosmos, which is anything in our universe. So I have no doubt and every confidence that many different people from different denominations and different religions have the ability to revamp their holy books to make it work.
There's a position. I haven't looked into this very much, and so I'll probably mispronounce it, but I think it's realism or realism.
Realism, yeah.
Yeah.
I know what you're talking about. I'm probably mispronouncing it too.
Yeah, and so like they've
made it work.
Yeah, it says on Wikipedia that they're an atheistic religion, and so that would be one that they would probably be citing some type of, hey, this is what we were saying. And the problem, I guess, the easier solution to this question is, unfortunately, you can always hide God behind something in every case. So I don't at least on the side for the like pastors you mentioned or the religious people, like I don't think it matters how far. If we go past like the Planck epoch and we start getting energy in like what were they, the hadron colliders, or this will demonstrate my ignorance on the topic pretty quickly, but when we actually achieve like the high enough energy that we do in other epochs where we know that it's not just a theoretical basis but an actual experimental basis, when we go back and I don't think it'll matter as much energy as we can achieve, that we can confirm like predictions we make. You'll always be able to slide God or something right behind it at all times, it seems like. The only thing I could really see otherwise is saying like demonstrating that we just live in an infinite set where there doesn't need to be a God to create the external world. But other than that, it seems like you can always kind of slide that card. And why? Because it's indistinguishable from nothing at all, so it's really easy to do.
Does that answer your question, Michael? And I would like to know if he's still on the line with us anyway, if we didn't get stuck back into the wind tunnel.
Hello?
Yeah, you're there, Mike. Sorry.
Can I ask you one more question?
Sure.
On the history of in the Bible and everything, and I've watched History Channel, and they never say that the Jewish people never really built the pyramids and this sort of thing. And I'm an elderly disabled veteran, and if any of my CEO would have ever come up to me and told me that I would have to kill the firstborn child or something, that is so horrible. I would not. Did that really happen in history? Did the pharaohs really make their
you're talking about the mass exodus?
Kill the firstborn. Is that really true, or is that another kind of like a myth or something? Because that really bothers me. I would never do that.
And for good reason.
My CEO,
yeah, for good reason that would bother you.
Sorry.
I don't think.
Sorry, I can't. I'm just listening.
That's okay. We're being punished by legs and exterior noises. But I'll answer for myself, but I know that I'm not a historian or a biblical scholar of any type, but from all of my research that I've done into it. Yeah, I was gonna say, I think, Mike, I'll let you speak for yourself, but I'm pretty sure you're not a professional historian either. But I think it's pretty conclusive that all the evidence shows that there's no reason to believe that anything like the Exodus described in the Old Testament or the Hebrew Bible happened in history. So I think you can feel some relief that I don't think that any actual firstborns were taken by the angel of death. I think it's called. Yeah.
I couldn't imagine anybody being so mean and cruel. I would never. I'm a disabled veteran. If my CO would have told me to go kill, I would have told her to go. I would have gotten in trouble, but I told her to go piss up a road. I would never kill a child of any kind. It makes me so unhappy to hear that sort of thing, man. That I would never do anything like that. It's so
and it's so strange too, because when you grow up learning and hearing these stories, and I think obviously a lot of times they'll introduce these stories to children in a more kind of PG kind of edited version, so it's not quite as scary, but you hear these stories over and over and over again from such a young age, and it's so accepted in like wider society that these are part of our cultural background history. You don't sometimes take a minute to step back and or just to look at the story and think about what's actually happening in the story. That was part of my journey out of Christianity. It was reading through and imagining these people and these families, going through these things and going into like an unknown land and slaughtering the people just so that they could have the property, and really picturing these things as happening in real life. And I just felt sick to my stomach. I was very relieved and happy to discover in my journey that a lot of these things are just stories, and there are no reason to believe that they happened. Not to say that there wasn't, barbaric things that had happened in the past, but specifically the ones that were propping up my belief. I didn't have to stand by them anymore.
My brother is a Baptist minister in Alabama. I've always loved him, but he said the Bible is totally true. Everything is. He won't talk to me. He won't have anything to do with me anymore, because I don't believe that somebody would be that cruel to kill little innocent babies. So anyway, I really do appreciate y'all. I listen to y'all all the time. Y'all are very much of a comfort for me, and I love listening to y'all. I've learned so much from you, and I really do appreciate. Thank you very much.
Well, we appreciate you, Michael, and it hurts my heart to hear that in your own family that's the case. I think there's a lot of listeners that resonate with that exact that same notion. So we appreciate that. One thing to think about too on that point, it's always strange because you mentioned this thing like killing a firstborn son, whatever it might be, slavery in the Bible, that we all look at and we're like, yeah, like that clearly doesn't align with my values. Or if we said there was this objective morality, right? It's like, I'm pretty hard pressed to say that that's the thing, right? That's going to be the objective standard to hold to. But if we really look at like the Christian worldview, they believe in a perfectly good God, right? And we analyze what the notion of good means, something that you ought do, right? When something is evil, something you ought not do. Right? These are like the standard type of normative notions we use in morality, goodness, right? You ought to do something that's good. You ought not do something that's bad. But if God is perfectly good, then every member in the set that he does ought to be done, because he can't do things that ought not be done. And so the Christian can't even have evil in their worldview in this case, because it's seemingly that whatever action that he's implementing into the world, that just eventually serves as the greater good, right? Then it's just going to be this issue of something that ought to be done. And so that's something that I've been talking with some people just in debate circles that is really damaging, I think, to this view because it almost just is constitutive of the fact that a Christian can't even say that there's evil in the worldview, because it must be implemented. All these evil acts must happen in order for the greater good. Jesus must go on trial. Pontius Pilate must put him on trial for the salvation, right, or for the resurrection. And so once you really break it down, you really start to notice that they can't even say that there's anything evil in their worldview, because if it's all by this act of a perfectly good God, it ought to be done. I don't know why anyone would want to hold on to that notion of it being good, but yeah.
Thank goodness. Thank goodness. Thank science. Yeah, thank history that we can walk away from these things, right? That's like, it's a pretty heavy. It's a pretty heavy burden, I think, looking back on it, to think that I've spent so many years of my life trying to justify stuff that I knew and I felt and I understood was went against everything that I think is right and that we ought to do. So
yeah, and I'm going to put a burden on you, and we can do this quick because we're running at the end of the show, but I'm going to put a burden on your shoulders.
Yeah.
Why did you believe you were an alien? Why don't you give us a little? We had a little sneak peek into that. Why don't we end the show with this? I mean, but seriously though, because what we talked about before the show, I sound fancy behind the scenes. What you had expressed to me seemed, it's very attached to that deconversion process, and it's not something that should be like laughed at, because it's probably integral to your deconversion as well, or at least towards that back end of it. So why don't you kind of now we have the first part of that, but why don't you kind of explain that process if you can?
So I deconverted. I went through my whole process about, I guess, I don't even know what year it is. It was in 2019, so it'd be kind of the year before the pandemic and all of that. So anyway, I had kind of come to the point, I'll skip forward to this point. I'd come to the point where I knew I didn't believe that Christianity was true anymore. And I came to that conclusion based a lot on like the history of the Bible. And because I was an errantist before, getting to the point where I kind of was very, very lost my confidence in the Bible being historically accurate, and like the eyewitness testimony and all of that. And then what we were talking about with the last caller, the historical unreliability of the events that happened in the Old Testament as well. I'd given up my belief in the whole Abrahamic faith total. But I had mentioned earlier that I had an upbringing in like quite a charismatic movement, and I had this kind of very mystical worldview that involved entities and the sorts. So I think there's like kind of like this pipeline that I went on unintentionally on the internet, where I was looking I was looking at things, and I was interested in also kind of like the self-help kind of aspect of the internet. And at that point I had kind of undiagnosed religious trauma syndrome. So I had a hard time dealing with my emotions as well. So I had a lot of this experience of feeling kind of different, and like I wasn't coping as well at life, or like a motherhood and these different areas. I wasn't doing as well as other people. I struggled more. I got overwhelmed a lot more. These sort of things. So it was a combination of those things, of looking up history, self-help, and being already kind of interested in mystical things and mindfulness. I kind of got on this track of meditating, turned into kind of new age beliefs with like the idea of the power of manifestation. Felt very, very comfortable to me because I had come from a faith healing and a charismatic kind of movement. There was a few more lines that were kind of blurry there, but at one point I came across a thing that talked about this blood type, and it was linked to, I think, Gaia and the History Channel. I can't remember exactly which channel I heard it from first. Anyway, I have that blood type.
Sounds about right.
I have that blood type. So boom, all my answers were solved. The reason why I struggled and why I felt like, a little disconnected from life, whatever all those things I was going through, all of it was answered, because I'm not actually human. I'm some sort of weird hybrid. And that answer to me, that like totally enticed me. And I spent several weeks, I would say close to 3 months, convinced, or at least very, very open to the idea that I was an alien. And I'm grateful for that experience, because it was that experience that taught me skepticism eventually.
Yeah,
and skepticism led me completely out of all the supernatural beliefs. And I've got the help. I got the actual mental health care that I needed, got the diagnoses that I needed, and eventually found my way to atheism and secular humanism, and it's been the best thing I've ever done. So
well, and it's interesting because like on one end, like you're here, I'm here, and in the middle is this like spiritual kind of process, right? I called myself an atheist from like an early age after I actually looked into things, and then was like, I don't know if I think I'm spiritual or something, but I was going probably headed towards that direction. But I want to point this out, that when you're coming from like a background like Christianity, it's so easy to slide into something like that.
I just slid right over. Yeah. It was no problem. No problem.
Whereas someone like myself, even though I have like, or I don't now, but I had this kind of like, I like that. That sounds interesting. I think that might be true. It was like still harder for me to, maybe that was my inevitable path of thinking I was an alien myself through, the beliefs that I had. Very small in comparison, but they could have led that way. And so I wonder, like, if that was maybe my hang up in the sense was because I sit there and I go, how much of that was out of my control? Like I was born in some situation where I had a very lucky, fortunate situation, and not everybody gets that. And so that always like interests me, because it's like, you would think on one end, it's like, even though I believe that stuff, it'd be really hard for me to get to alien. But when you're from this, I believe in a perfectly God that sent his son that died on the cross, or,
and like
split the moon or whatever, it's really easy to kind of slide into that notion. But
I have the idea that someday I should sit out and just get a big, like, those shows where they have the pieces of paper and like the yarn and it's going crisscross and like connect all the dots on how the hell I got there. Because to me, I looking back, I can see how it happened. It wasn't like this just big weird change that all of a sudden I thought I was an alien. Every little thing was just like a one little
divert to
step,
some,
one little step further down this like rabbit hole. And by the time I got to like this way far out end, like I understand how people get sucked into conspiracy theories. I understand how these things happen. And I also understand the vulnerabilities that are preyed upon for those people too. So like it's very interesting to me, and it gives me compassion for people who are maybe like stuck in a movement or a conspiracy that on the outside just looks ludicrous, because I understand that it's not you don't just one day wake up and you have your head on straight. Like it happens slowly.
Yeah.
I'd be interested
I'd be interested you do that line and you're like, oh, this was June of 2009. That was a weird month when I believed this to there.
Yeah.
That was a strange month. Yeah. But no, we appreciate you telling your story in that case, as I think it's definitely important, especially like I engage with a lot of people that are spiritualists, or especially a lot of astrology. There's a lot of people that I talk to, and so
I still have my astrology tattoo from that stage.
So it's
and yes, it's on my middle finger.
There's a whole other side of it, but one thing that's important is what you said was the self-help realm. It's a great realm for some people where the help is actually legitimate. It's also a breeding ground for cult-like behavior and leaders. And so if you're someone that's struggling, we have our resources, recovering from religion. You can reach out to these organizations. But if you have an organization in that self-help realm where they're using methodology and techniques that clearly don't seem right, or they're making, it seem like everybody else is wrong, but we're the right group. Yeah. Be careful of those types of self-help groups.
You're looking for, evidence-based, maybe trauma-informed. Like there are these things that we can learn on how to safeguard yourself from falling into really weird movements that are going to be more harm than good.
Yep. Keep the notion of good, solid epistemology when you were deconverting, as well as when you're into these types of self-help groups. Some are way more reputable than others, some with demonstrable results like recovering from religion. And so it sucks that some of these types of things share the same space, and it's hard to kind of weed out the ones that are really trying to help you and the ones that are trying to sell you lies for monetary gain or for whatever type of gain. But anyway, I want to reiterate that you can find ExXtian Erin. I always want to say like ExXtian Erin.
Yeah, that's fine too.
But you go Truth Wanted on Fridays. I always get the Central wrong. So you guys are 7 p.m. Central, right? 8 p.m.
Yeah.
Eastern.
7 p.m. Central time on Fridays. Every Friday night.
And so go check out that. We're going to give our love rings to the crew. So I'm going to give it to everybody, but I want to give love rings. Like, you won't be able to see them, right? But I'm giving my own love rings to the crew. And the crew is, if we can get them on the screen. There they are, the lovely crew. Wow, my light flickers at me. I have my own technical issues going on here, I guess, in my own room. I need a crew for just my one light, apparently, in my
just a whole maintenance for that one bulb.
Yeah, they can't help me everywhere. I still have to fend for myself here, my own problems, sadly. But yeah, we want to just anyone that is on the front lines with being an essential worker, regardless of whether you believe or you don't. We really thank you. You're making everything just a little bit better, and we're getting towards the end of this whole mess, and so we appreciate you and everything that you're doing. If you don't believe, this is your community, but if you do believe, we don't hate you. We're just not convinced. Take care, everybody.
We want the truth, so watch Truth Wanted live Fridays at 7 p.m. Central. Visit tiny.cc/YTTW and call into the show at 512-991-9242 or connect to the show online at tiny.cc/calltw.